Hi everyone, I hope you're all doing really well and welcome back to my podcast, Life of an Artrepreneur. I get a lot of questions about what competitions you should be entering as a wildlife artist. So in today's episode, I'm going to cover why competitions matter, where to find them, and which ones are especially relevant for wildlife artists. Firstly, there's such a wide variety of competitions and exhibitions and platforms out there that can just give you a bit of a boost in terms of that exposure as an artist, especially kind of early on. And I think some competitions are a lot bigger and more well respected than others. Some are online, some are in person, some are a lot harder to get into than others. Some put on an exhibition, some support conservation, some award prizes. Like, you need to think what it is that's going to benefit you as the artist and what reasons you want to apply or submit work into that specific competition. Whether it is for exposure or for networking and meeting other artists or potential collectors or just other people sort of in your niche, or just because you want to be part of an exhibition and see your work in like a professional space, or even just support conservation and be part of something bigger. When I was just starting out, I think it would have been easier if there was like one place that just listed all the competitions and exhibitions that I could apply for to kind of get my name out there quicker and earlier. But back in the day, I didn't really know where to look. So I'd kind of follow the artists that inspired me on social media and message them, look at what they were posting, see what exhibitions they've been part of, see what competitions they're entering, and see what they're getting shortlisted for. Sort of read up and research about that specific competition and see if it kind of aligns with what I'm doing. So yeah, just kind of figured it out as I went really, and kind of made a list, the more of them that I was coming across, so I'd remember the sort of timeline for next year, and then apply if I thought my work would kind of have a chance of being shortlisted, or if my work was similar, if they were picking similar artwork to be in their exhibition, or the previous winners were also like wildlife colour pencil artists, you know, that you're kind of on the right lines. I always thought that being shortlisted into a big, well-known, well-respected competition almost like established you as an artist. But you've got to remember that it definitely doesn't determine your success. You can get rejected from these things 50 times, but it definitely doesn't determine your success. You have to remember that art is just so subjective. Every single competition is completely different. Like, different competitions and different judges are looking for something specific or looking for different things. So it doesn't mean that your work isn't good enough or to a high enough standard. It just might mean that your style or the subject that you've drawn might not quite fit the vision that they had in mind, and that's okay. And this is where you can kind of start getting an idea for which competitions are more suited to you. The more that you apply for, and the more rejections that you get, and the more you see what work they have selected that year, the more you'll kind of gravitate towards some competitions more than others. So if you're listening to this episode, or if you're watching on YouTube, then grab a pen and paper because you can write these down. These are the main ones that I know of that I've applied for in the past. Some I've been shortlisted for, some I've exhibited with, and some I've been rejected from every single time. But you can always research them and get a feel for the kind of work that they like. The deadline has passed for most of these this year, but it gives you plenty of time to apply for next year. So we've got the UK Coloured Pencil Society annual open exhibition. That's mainly online. We've got the Explorers Against Extinction Sketch for Survival, Green and Stone Summer Exhibition, Green and Stone Works on Paper Exhibition, the David Shepherd Wildlife Artist of the Year competition, which I feel like for pet portrait and wildlife artists is probably the most kind of famous, well-respected one. Art and Colour 365 Pets competition, the Jackson's Art Prize and the Derwent Art Prize. And there's also the British Art Prize as well. But I think the ones that are more generic, like the British Art Prize, that are kind of open to any medium, any subject, they leave the brief sort of very open. I think you're less likely to get into something like that because they tend to gravitate more towards paintings or sculpture. And as much as I love colour pencils and think they're great, I think within the art scene, colour pencils aren't always seen as valuable as like an oil painting or painting in general. I think that's why pastel drawings are labelled as pastel paintings, because I feel like if someone who has a very traditional way of thinking with art and everything like that, very traditional, it kind of reframes the mind. They think this is a pastel painting, not a drawing. But anyway, I've just gone off on a tangent there. That's the list that I've written down basically. So yeah, make a list of those, go and check out the deadlines. Like I say, most of them are probably have been and gone this year. I think some of them might still be open, but definitely have a look. You might have heard of some of them before. Obviously, I'm aiming this more at pet portrait and wildlife artists who are using coloured pencils. But as long as you research the competitions and you think it's a good fit for you, then there's literally nothing stopping you from applying. So why should you enter competitions? The main reason, obviously, is exposure. I feel like, especially with social media now, you don't really need to rely as heavily on these exhibitions or competitions to get the exposure or get your name out there, because you're kind of doing that anyway just by documenting everything online. But I guess it still does give you that visibility and credibility, especially when there's awards and judges that are obviously, a lot more experienced, and you might look up to them as an artist, and the fact that they've chosen your work to win a prize, it must give you such a boost of confidence, and then other artists might start noticing your work, and it can kind of spiral that way. One that I mentioned before, obviously networking, especially if the competition is an exhibition. It's an opportunity to meet other artists in your niche, other wildlife artists. Being a self-employed full-time artist, you work by yourself a lot of the time. So doing things like this, it really opens you up to how many other people are in a similar position to you. You can relate straight away. You can ask each other questions. And also, it's not just artists at private viewings and exhibitions. People are actually there to buy the art. So you might end up talking to a collector or someone that's generally interested in your work, or they might like you as the artist, and that might lead to commissioned work later down the line. You just don't know who you're going to meet. So another reason to enter competitions would obviously be the opportunities that can come with that. So you might get the chance for your work to be part of an exhibition. If you struggle to sell artwork yourself, on your website shop or by promoting it yourself, having it in an exhibition where people can actually see it in person might just lead to a sale. And lastly, I feel like especially if you're a wildlife artist, it's really important to support conservation and actually help animals where you can. So creating work for the exhibition or for a competition can help raise money for conservation. And I just think it's good to be part of something like that on a much bigger scale than what you could do by yourself. And I guess it's good to be associated with helping animals through your artwork, supporting conservation efforts, and especially Sketch for Survival and the David Shepherd Wildlife Artist of the Year competition, which are the two main competitions, I'd say, as wildlife artists. They're both really, really good for that, because all through the year they've got loads of different conservation projects going on and they're helping animals, and it's good that they also get artists involved as well. So where can you actually find opportunities and find these competitions to enter? So I said before that when I was starting, there wasn't really a specific place that I knew of where you could look and see, literally a list of all these different ones you could enter. However, when I was writing these notes, I came across a few which I've not actually taken a look at, so do have a look at them and see if they help. One's called deadlineart.com and one is called Submittable, where you can search wildlife or conservation or coloured pencils, and it should literally come up with those specific competitions sort of niche down to your kind of artwork. And also you should have a look at social media groups, so wildlife art communities on Facebook, for example. They often share open calls for competitions or exhibitions that you might not have even heard of before, but it's a good opportunity to be part of something. So what are my tips for applying to competitions? You want to make sure you've got everything ready before you do the submission. Often you'll need an artist bio. You'll need really, really good quality, good lighting, pictures of your artwork. I also think keep a calendar or a document somewhere that literally lists all the deadlines for every competition, sort of when submissions open and when submissions close, because it's very hard to remember, to be honest, because there's that many. So that'll just help you stay organised with everything. You definitely want to give yourself enough time to complete the artwork, especially if you're doing something specifically for that competition that you've not already pre-drawn. You definitely don't want to be leaving it last minute and then kind of rushing it and then it's not your best work. I think it's better to kind of put your all into it, and even if you get rejected, you know that you couldn't have done any more. I feel like there's nothing worse than rushing through something, submitting it and thinking, I could have done a little bit better than that, but I'll just see anyway. Because you want to be really proud of your work, and if it does get through, you want to be I put my absolute everything into that. I also think you should budget for like entry fees, because some of these competitions, you know, they're like 25, 15, £30, depends on which one you're going for. And obviously if you're submitting multiple pieces of artwork, that can mount up. And then if it does get shortlisted or does go into the exhibition, you want to make sure that you're budgeting for like the travel costs or shipping if you're shipping your artwork. You know, going down to London and dropping off work and then going back to pick it up and then going down for the private viewing and hotels, like all of that actually does amount up. But it is a good thing to do and it is a good thing to be part of. But things like that do cost and they do mount up, so make sure you're bearing that in mind as well. Another tip for when you're applying, or you know that you're going to be submitting artwork for a competition, make sure you're documenting the whole process. I feel like your audience love to be taken on a journey with you from start to finish, whether it is your artwork. And I feel like the actual competitions value storytelling as much as the final work. So if they've seen the piece that you've done on social media because you've tagged them and they can actually see it coming to life from start to finish, that might just sway who they end up choosing. You just don't know who's going to see it. But yeah, I also feel like your audience and your followers can relate to you more because they like following your journey. Like I applied to David Shepherd Wildlife Artist of the Year competition 6 times before I was shortlisted, and each time I documented the full process. I did like YouTube videos on just that specific artwork, I did reels, like stories, posted about it, talked about it on my podcast. I was constantly posting updates and just keeping my kind of followers in the loop, so that when I did finally get shortlisted this year, I feel like people were rooting for me and were really happy for me because they'd been on that whole journey with me over the past like 6 years and they knew how hard I'd been trying previously, so it kind of paid off in the end. Another tip would be try not to be discouraged by getting rejected, because the more that you apply for, the more you're going to get rejected. There's going to be a lot of no's and a lot of rejections that you're going to have to just not take personally, because like I said, art is subjective, and use it as fuel to kind of do better when you apply the next time, if you apply the next time. And if that is something that you struggle with, I have done an episode all about dealing with rejection and knockbacks, because you do have to deal with a lot as an artist. So yeah, I'll probably link that episode in the video description below. But yeah, like I said, you know, competitions and exhibitions definitely don't determine your success as an artist, but they are good for exposure and for networking and for being part of something bigger. And competitions definitely aren't just about winning either. And if you win a prize or get recognised for your work and it helps you grow as an artist and you get more recognition, then happy days, bonus. So thanks for listening to this episode. I hope you've enjoyed it. Let me know what you thought by commenting below, and please subscribe to my YouTube channel to see more art related content, future episodes and artist vlogs. I've got a new one coming out very, very soon. And if you've been listening on Spotify or Apple Podcasts, then I'd love it if you could leave a review and share the episode with someone who you think it might help. And yeah, I wish you all the best of luck if you do apply for any competitions, either this year if any are still open that I've listed, or next year. Yeah, it's always a good thing to be part of. So yeah, I'll be back next week with a brand new episode, and I hope you all have a lovely rest of your week.